right. So the basic premise, right, um,
Okay.
of voice learning, basically what I've been saying to people recently, is have you ever played a game called Hot and Cold? I don't think it's like a formal game actually, but when I was growing up,
Okay.
we would like hide something in a room, and then you'd have to walk around and try to find what the hidden object was or where it was, and people would just be like telling you if it's hotter or if you're getting hotter or colder as you're sort of wandering through a space looking for something.
Yeah.
Um, that is sort of a microcosm of voice learning. There's a lot of potential changes to the voice. There's a lot of specific things that could, be the target of our learning. And we have to narrow down and really focus in on a specific sound quality. And then we have to learn if we're going more towards that sound quality or further away from it. Right. So as we start playing around, you're just going to basically be like exploring and experimenting. And our goal is going to be to say, okay, hey, does that sound like it's getting closer or further from our goal sound? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So fundamentally speaking, there's a lot of different ways that we can change the voice when we sort of perceive another voice or just a human voice in general. We are hearing a lot of different features that are what we would call a gestalt. And that just means that the whole is kind of greater than the sum of its parts. It it's got like a lot of little pieces, but that the experience of the voice is kind of like a new thing, right? It's like you're doing a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, and you've got all of these little tiny pieces, and then finally you put them together in a way that lets you see the bigger picture. That's what the voice is like. We want to start to investigate the little tiny pieces today and give you a handle on what those sound like and what they sound like when they're changing, um, so that we can kind of change the way that the overall picture sounds. Um, Not that pictures make noise, you know what I mean. So we're going to just sort of explore some of these overall broad features and what they sound like. We can categorize these features into two broad categories. So there are features that we would call personality implying features. These are features that have less to do with like, the way your body grew and more to do with your body's or with your personality, with your like personal history and the environment you grew up in, right? So these have to do with like things like our sort of like pitch contour, how much change in pitch and what that change in pitch sounds like. Um, that doesn't really have anything to do with my body's capabilities. It's more to do with like, did I just ever pick up the habit of speaking this way or not, right? And we can kind of hear if I were to speak and model a really monotonous kind of speech and just go blah 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 and not change anything, that's going to sound like a different person than if I were to change the pitch a lot during my speech. So if I were to then go to like someone who's constantly changing pitch and there's a lot of rise and fall, that starts to sound like maybe a different person is speaking. It's a kind of different personality of speaker. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat that bit again?
Yeah, yeah. So we're comparing a more monotonous kind of uh, sort of speech pattern where there's not a great deal of rise and fall. This kind of pitch contour is a feature that we might associate with personality. If everything is really monotonous and stays the same, that's going to sound like maybe a slightly different kind of person than someone who's constantly changing their pitch and rising and falling and going up and down, right? Can we hear that slight change that just happened between those two kinds of
Yeah.
examples? Yeah. And we might think that that second person, maybe we have different words for it. We might think that they're a little bit more dramatic or a little bit flamboyant, or maybe it just, I don't think in my voice just now it sounded feminine, but it could maybe sound like a more feminine speech pattern. Those are all some potential outcomes of changing that feature. So it's our goal to kind of be aware of what these things sound like so we can start to make some alterations. Another example of a personality implying feature would be something like the rate of speech, how quickly you talk. You know, someone who's really slow and doesn't really change the speed at which they speak. That's going to sound one way versus someone who's like constantly speaking and is like really kind of rattling off a bunch of stuff all the time and never really stops and barely pauses to breathe. You know, that kind of person is going to have a different kind of impression. They're going to leave a different kind of like sense of what their personality is because that's just like a pretty dramatic difference. And then there's people who like really take their time. They go from something really slow and then they suddenly speed up. And that's also going to have some kind of personality implications. In general, we want to kind of be aware of how fast and slow we're talking, what the rate of our speech is as we're starting to explore. So that's another personality implying feature. Another really important personality implying feature is going to be oh, Lord God of Israel is going to be pronunciation. So we're used to hearing pronunciation as kind of a change in uh, accent. When we hear how someone's accent is changing, we tend to associate it with things like what was this person's first language, right? If I hear someone speaking English and it sounds like they have some slightly accented speech, I might assume, oh, okay, maybe this person learned English as a second language. I might assume, oh, maybe this person speaks English as a first language, but from a different region than mine, right? Suddenly it's a little bit like, oh, this is telling me a little bit about this person's personal history, the region they grew up in, right?
Yeah.
If I say, I gotta go park the car, and I say, I gotta go park the car, those people both sound like they're from different parts of the country. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The same thing, however, is true of um gender. So different sort of like speech patterns and pronunciations are strongly associated with specific genders, and we want to start to listen for this long term. Um, when we're assigned a gender at birth, that changes how people interact with us and what kinds of ways they speak to us and how they model speech. So it's really important that we start to hear this because often this is something that is quite subtle and that we don't have a a lot of like exposure to. So we have to kind of be extra careful that as we're listening to the way that we pronounce things so that we're not just kind of like casually mimicking stuff that we are subconsciously programmed with, but we want to start to be more intentional in our pronunciation. So, long term, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about personality implying features and all of the specific ways that we can change them to sound more masculine, right?
Yeah.
Our end goal is that we're going to try to get, right, if we think there are personality implying features and body implying features, which we'll talk about here in a second. We want to get these personality implying features to sort of corroborate the people's expectations about our body implying features. So we want them to kind of be matched and fit together, right? And we can use it to kind of complement people's experience of our gender or vocal gender. So we might, for example, say, okay, I want to sound like a particular kind of guy, right? I want to sound not like, I don't want to sound like some jock. I want to sound like, like a kind of nerdy dude. Totally fine. Those are going to be personality implying features that we're going to alter to see if we can achieve that balance. So in a lot of ways, these personality implying features have a lot to do with things like, like kind of your personal aesthetic and stuff like that, and how you want to present yourself. That said, none of that is fixed, and we're kind of constantly in flux as humans. We never stop changing. So, um, I don't ever have one vocal personality that I always use all the time. My vocal personality changes throughout the day depending on who I'm talking to, and I think that's true of most people's. We experience a high degree of change in these features all the time. So, cool. Personality implying stuff. Let's put a pin in that. We want to talk about body implying features now, because these are the features that tend to, in my experience, be most important to trans folk. So when we're exploring, voice change stuff for the first time, trans people tend to fixate really strongly on these body implying features. So what are they? So body implying features include a lot of things, and some of them have no relationship to gender. I might just have like a change in vocal efficiency, for example. This is going to tell us a little bit about my body. So if I were in the call and I sounded like this, right? You can hear that suddenly sounds a little bit less efficient. It sounds a little bit like I'm struggling to produce the sound and there's like something in the way. That kind of inefficiency tells us a little bit about my body. It might tell you that like maybe I'm under the weather, or maybe I've got like really bad allergies, or like whatever. But we've all heard people like talking like this and struggling to speak, and with kind of the like understanding like, this person's just a little sick, right? We've heard that from people before. So we can hear efficiency as kind of an indicator of wellness. Pretty wild. We can also hear efficiency if I take that same kind of sound feed quality and take it to a real extreme. And I do something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, yeah, this is pretty constricted. You can hear that sound. Maybe this sounds a little bit older now, right? Maybe this is making some kind of statement about my body's age. So we can hear that kind of quality, right, has that
Oh.
sort of implication of something related to my body's state as a whole. So that's what efficiency is. But that's not really gendered, right? I could imagine a very efficient feminine voice. I could imagine a very efficient masculine voice. I could imagine inefficient versions of both. So it becomes really crucial that we're not just listening for, efficiency. We start to listen for some other features. So those other features, the features that are really strongly linked to sexual development, are vocal size and vocal weight. So if you imagine like the voice of an infant fresh from the baby factory crying, like that sound is going to be probably the lightest and smallest sound that person is ever going to produce. And as they age, their voice is going to get larger and heavier into sort of like childhood. And then when they're going through adolescence, it's going to get larger and heavier again. And then when they go through adolescence and into adulthood, that sound is going to get larger and heavier still. And it's when we arrive at like adult female sound, that sound is going to be larger and heavier. When we then think, okay, adult male voices are just slightly more exaggerated, slightly more sexually developed voices. And so we want to think that this is all kind of a continuum of potential sounds. And as we start to get heavier and larger, if we take it to the extreme, that's when we start to sound more like sort of audibly masculine to our listeners. And if we wanted to sort of change categories, it's important that we're not thinking like, okay, I'm on one end of the spectrum and I have to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum. That's not really how it works, right? I'm not, I'm not over starting over here or sounding like super masculine. I have to go to zero to sound feminine. Instead, if I went to zero, I would sound like a baby, and I don't necessarily want to sound like a baby when I'm feminizing my voice. I don't know. Maybe other people do, but instead, I just have to move one category over. I have to move from this adult male sound to a more feminine sound. And that's just like one little category shift. And similarly, if you're masculinizing, you're going to just, you sound like an adult female. And if you just increase your size and your weight slightly, you're probably going to start sounding more masculine, probably more easily categorized in that masculine direction. So our goal is going to be to see, okay, can we start to get some shifts in size and weight and see what the impacts of those sounds are, and if I can kind of perceive and hear those sounds and yeah, see what I see. Does all of that make sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Cool, cool.
I'm so glad you mentioned just a category shift, because I have attempted to just go to into the deep end and tried to go like it's not that great.
So I
Or
think
like in
going to
terms
the
of
deep end is fun. I think it can be a good exploration, but we're not trying to necessarily completely rewrite your body, like we just want to get a little bit beefier, so
okay.
technical term, beefy. So cool,
Hmm.
let me make a note. We're talking about size and weight. Okay, so let's listen for some changes here, and I think we're going to start with vocal weight. um Maybe we start with size. So vocal size is kind of a perception of how large or small a sound source is. We can hear vocal size changes not just in human voices, but in, like literally if you pick up an empty box, you can tap on the side and it kind of, the sound of it gives you an implication of how heavy or how large that box is. If you were to like pick up a very large box, you'd be able to tell just by the sound of it, right? So similarly, this size framework, this is something that animal brains are kind of wired to perceive. Pardon me. This is something that animal brains are kind of wired to perceive. Animals in the wild will signal changes to aggression using changes to size. Because, right, if you could imagine like a dog that you're friendly with barking, and then that same dog barking at a stranger coming to deliver mail, that like ruff, ruff, ruff versus like roof, roof, roof change is a change in vocal size. What the dog is trying to signal is, I'm a very big dog. Don't come over here. I'll bite you with my big self. Like not not consciously, obviously, but trying to signal like, hey, I'm a very big animal. I'm more trouble than I'm worth. And so what we see is that this is actually something that is exhibited across animal species, and it's part of how our brains are wired to perceive these sound changes, which becomes super important because we want to change our size. And we're used to hearing it this way. We just maybe don't have that kind of language built in, right? We're not necessarily like, have a label for that sound. That's a really crucial part of this process is whatever these sounds end up making you think of, tell me. If it reminds you of a video, like a character from a video game or a cartoon, if it reminds you of just like if some word jumps into your head, that's totally fine. We want descriptions that we can use that your brain can like hang these ideas on, right? We want to put a label to the sound so that you can find that sound again more effectively. So I'm going to start changing size, and I want you to listen for this broad size change. I want you to tell me, we're going to make it a little easier. I'm going to make two sets of sounds. I'll do character A and character B, and I want you to tell me which of these two characters sounds larger to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So, here is character A. Hello everyone. How are you? I am character A, and I, am maybe a cartoon character, and I want you to think of what I look like. You know, maybe picture me. I don't know. And then I'm gonna count to five. One, two, three, four, five. And then, shortly after that, the character is joined by character B, who sounds like this.
Hello, I am character B, and I am also like a kind of cartoon character, and I want you to, uh, yeah, listen as I count to five. One, two, three, four, five.
Which character of those two sounded like the larger one?
A.
A. How did you make that assessment?
Um, sounded like it filled up the room more. Yeah,
Cool.
like, I don't know, but it does remind me of a character. It's like that, one of the Mickey Mouse, one of the crew, and one of them the dog. I don't know which one that is. Doofus? I don't.
Yeah.
But like,
Here's the thing. This kind of sound super common in cartoons. Kind of goofy for sure. Oh, yuck. Right,
okay,
that kind of
Goofy.
like
That's what I
thing.
was
But
thinking.
also like
Yeah.
Patrick Star, no, this is Patrick, has this kind of larger quality, right? And our goal is maybe to think of like, yeah, who all fits that category of sounds and what do they have in common, right? What do that sound like? What's the root of that kind of sound and can I aim for it? The second character, on the other hand, didn't, right? Had some other stuff going on, but it didn't sound particularly large, right?
If
Yeah.
anything, it sounds, I don't know, I think of it like this.
If we take this first character, I imagine that this first character is kind of a cartoon giant, right? Like fee, fi, fo, fum, right? And he's kind of like larger and bigger, right? And then as I start to get smaller,
And then I could become kind of like a cartoon gnome or something, like, oh, one, two, three. I don't really know. Gnomes don't have like a thing they say, but I'm gonna figure it out. So, like, this kind of sound, one, two.
we want to hear that change. To me, that sounds like size. Like I can literally envision like a little small little gremlin, and then I can envision a gigantic kind of dopey guy, and both of those kind of correspond to these voices. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
So when we're masculinizing, we want to aim for a larger sound. We want to see if we can get this kind of change towards this cartoon giant. Can you try for me and just go like fee fi fo fum?
Let's see. Fee, fi, fo, fum. But uh, I think fee, 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 fi, fo, fum.
Cool, cool. Try this for me.
I think.
Give me fee fi fo fum in your baseline voice.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
Cool. And now, here, I'm going to just kind of throw something at you. Have you ever been talking and then you started yawning?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you continue talking because you're not going to let something like a little yawn stop
Right.
you, right?
Yeah.
And then you start talking. What does that sound like?
That you have a larger sound,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imitate that sound? Could you pretend to start yawning and then talk a little bit?
let's see. Hold on. Like this? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you go one,
I.
two, three?
There's 1, 2, 3.
Cool. One, two, three, four, five.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Cool. Let's
8, 9, 10.
yes. Perfect. Perfect actually, because we can listen and we'll just hear was there a change in size? What did we perceive that's change in size as? Go ahead. I just uploaded a little clip in the lessons
Oh,
text,
okay.
um, which is the built-in voice channel here, and you can hit play and listen to that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think.
Yeah, the
I think I just
initial
ran out
sound.
of
I
yawning space.
sorry, what was
Yeah.
that?
No, I like the 8, 9, 10 I did at the end. I think I just ran out of yawning
Yeah,
space. But no, I can hear some changes.
cool. Definitely changing size. I think the 8, 9, 10 wasn't quite as exaggerated. There's something off about the yawning sound. Can you hear that it doesn't sound like a sort of typical speech-like sound for some reason?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. That's really crucial to start listening for because that little imbalance is something we want to hone in on and then eliminate. So, we'll talk more about this in a second, but that's something super crucial, and I'm glad that you noticed it. By the end of the recording, you got to a sound that I think is smaller. It wasn't the same size anymore, but it's still maybe slightly larger than your baseline, and it still sounds more like typical speech. What we want to do is kind of develop to the point where we can get that larger sound from the yawn that to sound a little bit more typical. But we'll talk about how to get there here in a second. Let's go back to that larger sound a couple more times and just take it. We just want to see if we can go from like your baseline size to a larger size. So try for me. Go like 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3.
Oh, just using both sets of voices
Yeah,
or
yeah. Baseline first. 1, 2, 3, and then
okay.
larger. 1, 2, 3.
Um 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3.
Good. Really yawny. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Cool. Yes. Whoa. And that happened totally fine. I love that. We want that. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Um I think I can the good thing is I can kind of yawn on command, but swallowing kind of destroys the yawning
Yes.
property.
Swallowing, probably
So I
taking
have
like a
like
normal breath. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that resets you to normal that we want to just kind of be cognizant of, or just kind of aware of as we go through this process. Go ahead and try.
hold on, let me try
Yeah,
it
we
again.
want to just see if we can bounce back and forth a little bit.
Um 1, 2, 3.
Good. Oh,
1, 2, 3.
love that.
Uh,
Love that. 1, 2. Let's say like hello, hello.
hello,
And
hello,
then back to
hello,
normal. Hello, hello.
hello,
And
hello,
back to large. Hello, hello.
hello, hello, hello.
Cool. What we want to start doing is finding this slightly larger sound more consistently and being able to maintain it. You'll probably feel like, taking a deep breath, swallowing, or whatever. Those things are all going to kind of reset what's happening, and that's totally fine. We're not here to hold the throat in any kind of particular position, except for when we're trying to make speech sounds. You know what I mean? So we want things to be so that you get the sound quality in that configuration. Before you start talking, and then you talk that way, and then when you're done talking, everything kind of returns to rest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. I want to spend a little bit of time now talking about vocal weight. So you can hear changes to vocal size. You're exhibiting changes to vocal size. I love that. I'm going to make a note that yawning as a cue really worked. Um, but now we kind of want to hear weight, and then how weight and size kind of go together. So weight is this property that is kind of just like, to me, how heavy the sound is. Part of what our goal is during this process is to kind of become what we call mutant listeners, people who perceive sounds in ways that are a little bit different than um, the sort of like general population. So our goal is to sort of learn to uncover these sounds, and then we kind of always hear them. We can maybe turn off our critical listening, but it's always going to be kind of present. We're always going to have the ability to. And that's what's going to help you train your own voice long term. Well, wait, I have kind of convinced myself I've become a mutant listener, and I really do perceive this sound as a change in the vocal weight, how heavy or how light it sounds. But there's a lot of other words we can use to describe this sound change, and I'm going to ask you to prompt. I'm going to prompt you to tell me what some of those are. So if it reminds you again of any particular characters, if any particular words start to jump to your mind, let me know, because that's what we want to use to hone our sort of specific label for this sound change. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'll start with a pretty moderate weight, and I'm going to start getting heavier and heavier. I think I've got to move my mic a little bit further. Apologies for any kind of noise, but I'm going to start. I'm going to start here. Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that this is a pretty moderate weight, and I'm going to now get a little heavier. 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3. Can you hear a difference between those two sounds?
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
Okay. The first one, it's like, it sounds, if you have a lighter, I assume the first one is like a lighter weight. And it's like, I don't know, it's a little, it sounds kind of airy.
Cool.
How to describe it? Breath. I don't think it's breathy. It has like air-like
Yeah,
quality to it.
floaty.
I haven't. Yeah. That's the best way I could describe. Floaty is a good word.
I love that you said airy but not breathy. That's 100%, right? Here's that same sound with breathiness. 1, 2, 3. And we can hear like audible airflow. Versus right? This is still light, but it doesn't have like a lot of air leak sound. Yeah. Versus this, right? 1, 2, 3. What does this start to sound like?
I sounds like it sounds closer to yelling.
Sounds a little yelly.
It sounds kind of.
Yeah.
And then what else? Yelly. Yeah, it's like what a coach would try to do. Put more weight into what they're saying, like a football coach training people. That's they would put more weight into it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. I sometimes it can come a bit shriller.
Shrill. Yeah.
Shrill. And then I think those are the shrill, yelling. I sometimes perceive it as being more confident. I don't know why.
Yes.
That's more of like a
Human
personality thing.
brains are wired to
And
hear
then,
this change in weight as a sign of a change in aggression. So there's a fine line between kind of aggression and confidence, right? If I'm being confident, I'm being just a little, just a hair aggressive, right? To just be like, hey, I understand what I'm saying and I'm putting my foot down a little bit about this thing. I'm being confident. If I take that too far and I start getting really, really heavy, right? Then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, wait, hold on. Wow, no one was having an argument. Now you sound aggressive for no reason. This change, often, I will say, trans masked people want to shy away from because I think it is just louder and more disruptive than they are used to being. And it sounds kind of aggressive, and people don't necessarily want to feel like an asshole who's just like yelling at other people. It feels like you're yelling, and it feels like kind of like, ugh. And I think honestly, all of that is super relatable. I think you might have to just tell yourself while we're playing around with this, like, it's cool. I'm just going to be yelling for a little while as
mm,
we start to make this
okay.
feel a little bit more normalized. Does that feel reasonable?
Yeah, so like it's different when you're just trying to learn stuff, I guess. But like if you're trying to get, but if in real life when you talk, you're not gonna be that aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is
Here,
that
let's take it further. So let's listen to
okay?
like um so here's that moderate weight I started with. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm gonna get a little heavier. 1, 2, 3, right? And this maybe sounds like I'm yelling. Well, one of the ways that can stop sounding like I'm yelling is if I lower the pitch, but keep the weight. 1, 2, 3. Can you hear that this is now heavy but kind of lower in pitch and it doesn't necessarily have the same yelly kind of quality? Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the
Okay.
yell was how high in pitch I was being. So one way to mitigate that would be to get lower in pitch, and then my goal would be, all right, how heavy can I go even further? 1, 2, 3, right? Now I'm quite heavy, and this sounds different, right? It doesn't necessarily sound like yelling, but I could hear it being like kind of. I can hear a change happening,
Yeah.
right? That again is another change in weight. I'm getting a little heavier. Can you hear that?
Right.
Right. When I go
I
for
think
my
so.
absolute heaviest sounds, I also subconsciously, or not subconsciously, because of like there's a link between weight and pitch, I'm also going to probably be going for my lowest pitch sounds as well. So like 1, 2, 3. That sound is like my absolute heaviest, and in order to get there, I've got to like one right? I've got to go all the way to the basement and try to see if I can find that sound. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
That
Interesting.
said, like, I obviously don't hang out down here, so when I start trying to talk, it sounds kind of effortful. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, for now, I want to get used to this and start to beef it up. You're going to spend your time, I would say, developing that, but then you don't actually want to spend, I don't think, your voice long term, we don't want it to be in your heaviest configuration, right? If this is my 100% heaviest, 1, 2, 3, then I have no room for like inflection. I have no room to get heavier if I do need to signal a change in aggression. If I do need to like tell someone, hey, like fucking back off, dude. Like if I have to get heavier, there's nowhere for me to go. I'm stuck down there, so it's kind of a trap. But if I develop that sound, 1, 2, 3, and then I start to back off, and now my weight that I'm actually targeting is significantly lighter, right? You can hear that this isn't anywhere near as heavy as I was a second ago. But now if I need to, I can be like, hey, well, dude, like, what the fuck? And get heavier and sound like I'm being a little bit more aggressive. Sound like I'm maybe like setting a boundary or putting my foot down about something. So
Oh.
you're going to do the same thing. In your body, it's going to feel different. And in your ear, you're probably not going to hit. I have experienced more androgen exposure and more androgenization than you have. So my ability to get heavy is higher than yours. So we're going to find where your weight ceiling is and then find like, okay, if that's the ceiling and we can't get any heavier than that today, then let's pull back a little bit and find something that's more moderate that you can live in that still signals to the listener, hey, this person has experienced some androgenization, some sexual development that sounds masculine. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go ahead and we're going to start changing the weight. Can you start with like, we're going to start with the super light sound. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Oh yeah. I think this is challenging for me. I think so. One, 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 two,
Maybe try
one,
like a Minnie Mouse.
one,
Like, oh, 1, 2, 3.
one, one, two, three.
And now we're going to get like a little heavier
Okay.
and go back to your baseline. Wait.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2,
Cool.
3. 1,
You'll
2,
notice it's going to
3.
get a little lower in pitch,
Okay.
probably, right? That first 1, 2, 3. Same, right? When
Yeah.
I'm going for my lightest sounds, I have to go super high in pitch to find them. Totally normal. Now let's get heavier. And we're going to lean into this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So there are two kind of primary strategies for how people get loud. And in general, we can think that people are either getting heavier or getting higher in pitch. Most people are doing some combination of both. As you're getting heavier right now, I
Okay.
want you to limit yourself on pitch. Don't let your pitch change too much. If anything, we're going to aim to get like yelly but low pitched. Does that make sense?
Yelly. Aim for yelly but
Yes.
low
So
pitch.
normally if I were yelling, I'd probably go like,
Okay.
"Hey, oh my god, right? I'm getting heavier, but like I'm also getting higher in pitch." But that's going to be kind of a trap. It's harder for me to be really heavy at that higher pitch range. So instead of, "Hey, oh my god, I'm going to come down here. Hey, something down here," and find something a little heavier. Does that make sense?
Okay. So what
Let's
should I
try
be
hey.
saying?
Go like,
Just like 1, 2,
"Hey,
3.
hey."
Okay. Okay. So hey, uh, hey,
Yeah.
hey,
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 hey.
hey, 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 um,
Yeah.
hey.
Hey, that feeling,
Slower.
that was
Okay.
100% it. Did you feel like it would like hit and then you kind of like, it's
Hey.
hard and then you kind of backed off. That's totally typical. It is hard. It's freaking difficult. So as you play around with this, don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. If it feels like, oh, wow, that feels like it's more energy than I'm usually putting into the sound. Does that make sense?
Oh,
It's
okay. Yeah.
way more energetic. So let's try hey.
So hey,
Yeah. Can you be
hey,
even louder down at that
energetic.
pitch range?
Um, Hey, hey, hey.
Good. Here's what I want to try. You're gonna do a little uh 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 like you almost like you just body checked somebody, like you just like completely bumped into someone while you're walking and you go like uh.
Okay. So
Yeah.
make that
Yeah.
sound.
Uh.
Ugh.
Good. And now you're gonna sustain that. You're gonna go uh uh. Crap. It sounds like I'm struggling to hear what you're producing, not because of you, but because of Discord.
Yeah.
Can we go into your user settings
Okay.
right quick and just see if there's something we can change here really quickly?
Yeah. So I'm in user
And then
settings.
you're going to click into voice and video.
Voice and video. Okay.
Then you'll see input mode. So there's like at the very top of the screen, input device, and then slightly lower, input mode. Are you on voice activity?
Yeah.
And there's a little
Yeah.
toggle that says automatically determine input sensitivity. Is that enabled?
Yes. Automatically determined.
Disable that
Yes.
for me.
Oh. Okay. Hold on. Accessibility. Automatically. So. Okay. Yeah.
And then that should open up a green bar for you. It's like yellow and green. I want you to slide that all the way to the left. So the input sensitivity is now set to like negative 100 decibels. Yes.
So it's very sensitive, essentially.
And then there's one more change in this menu that I want to do. So we're going to scroll down past video settings to advanced, and you'll see noise suppression as an option. And I want to turn that off.
Yeah.
None. Perfect. Then we are good to go.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Let's go really lightly. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, super light just to experience the opposite end of the spectrum. Ooh, ooh.
Ooh, ooh.
Nice.
Ooh.
And now, ooh, ooh, ooh.
Ooh,
Good.
ooh, ooh.
And now,
ooh,
something that
ooh.
might be useful is to think of a couple of different things that we want to target. Yelling, kind of this like, kind of quality, like you're bumping into someone, that glottal strike or glottal attack. And then potentially, this is maybe something you might want to practice using a pillow to cover your face so that you can really be as loud as you want to be without any fear of like, you know, people listening in or like, you know, it's not going to be super audible. Babe, do you mind handing me that pillow? Pillow? Yes, thank you. So if you do something like this, can you hear that that sounds muffled? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can be as loud as I need to be without like any fear of being overheard. So that's something that I find really useful as a practice strategy. And when I'm doing like crazy belting at 2 a.m., I use that strategy to kind of do that.
Oh.
So it sounds like you're hearing this change from lighter to heavier. We want to see if we can incorporate that heavier sound in some speech. So I want you to go like, and then go like A, B, C, D, E. Again, trying to be as heavy and loud as you can.
Okay. Uh. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Did you feel like you were maintaining, or did it feel like it started kind of heavy and then pulled back?
Probably pulled back.
I agree. It'll probably be difficult to maintain that high degree of weight. 1, 2, right? And hold on to it the whole time. This is freaking difficult. So, especially at first, see if you can, but like, don't, you know, if you feel yourself pulling back, just make note of it. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah.
It's really important for you to for I just want to say like this is not a muscular thing. We're not trying to build muscle or anything. We're just trying to learn the most efficient way to be heavy in your voice. Cool.
Gotcha.
Let's try one more time. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2,
Cool.
3.
So there's a little change on 3. 3 ended up getting almost a little gnome sounding here. I want you to go ahead and listen to that and see what you see.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I can hear it. Yeah,
Cool.
I can hear that. I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah,
about that because
I don't know what's up.
that's the last thing I want to talk about today. Um, so when we start thinking of size and weight, it's really easy to think of like, these individual things, but in reality, when we're listening to a voice, we're not ever just hearing size versus weight alone. We're always hearing the whole, right? We're always hearing the gestalt of the voice. And one of the ways that we can start to get better at listening for the interplay of these features is to start listening for a feature we call fullness, which is an emergent feature. It emerges from the interaction between size and weight. So I want you to imagine, right? We were talking about how like size and weight are both dependent on sexual development. If I start to imagine a voice getting heavier and larger, well, it's unlikely that I'll find a voice that gets really, really large but never gets very heavy. Can you hear this kind of like atypical quality that the voice is kind of settling into?
Um, the
Well,
typical
it's
voice?
atypical,
I
meaning it's
I
not very
don't
typical sounding. Kind of maybe sounds
atypical.
cartoonish. Yeah, this
Yes.
is a really large voice, but it's quite light. And so this is a bit of a mismatch, right? It's not necessarily what we would expect to hear. So there's kind of like a hollow sound to it. Oh, oh, right? Like it's missing something. And maybe if I get
Oh,
even lighter, it'll be more obvious. Can you hear? I'm really large, but it just kind of has this like missing something, right? Can you hear that?
yeah. Is it because the
Yeah.
weight is lighter?
It's because whatever the size is, the
Okay.
weight needs to match it. If size and weight don't match, the voice doesn't sound typical. Your voice that you speak with right now sounds full. It's achieved fullness. It has a particular weight and a size that is matched to that weight. My voice that I'm using right now sounds typical. There's a balance between the size and the weight. The vast majority of voices you hear in your day to day life sound typical. They probably have some balance between size and weight that makes them sound full. Sometimes there are outliers. Sometimes people will have slightly under full or slightly over full sounds. So they'll sound a little bit like this, and maybe they'll have like a little bit the size too large for how heavy they are. Um, but typically not to the extreme of like a cartoon character. So if we think about this kind of sound, the way that I can get this sound to sound typical is to get heavier. So I'm going to start really large and I'm going to go, hey, 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 hey. Can you hear that I'm still really large, but now I've increased the weight and the voice kind of takes on a more normal sound? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
Uh,
is what we're hoping to accomplish. Okay. So the thing that I think you were shying away from with the yawny voice was that you were finding kind of like this sound, a kind of yawny, but it doesn't sound particularly typical, right? And in
oh,
order to
okay.
make it
Yeah.
sound typical, you just need to get a little heavier, and then it'll start to sound a little bit better in balance. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay.
We're going to see if we
That's
can
useful.
find
So
that sound
yawning.
now together. So I want you to go large with me and go like, hello, hello, Yanni.
By yawning? Okay. Hello, hello,
Cool.
hello,
And now,
hello.
hello, 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 hello. And you're going to get heavier and see if you can find a balance of a large size and a heavier weight.
Hello, 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 hello,
Cool. And if
hello,
you can, get even
hello.
yawnier as
Um,
you go, so you're still staying like quite large.
okay. Oh, hello, 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 hello,
Yeah, okay.
hello,
Let's listen to this one
hello.
really quick.
Ah,
It
okay.
sounds like you started large, but then listen to what happens to the size as you continue forward.
I think I'm just using my normal
Yeah.
voice at the
You
end.
started with the yawn, and then you kind of like
Think,
released the size and you went back towards your norm. Can you hear? I'm like starting here. This is definitely big. And then as I'm going, it just kind of goes back towards something that's a little bit smaller.
yeah.
Cool. Let's go back to the large size and go like one, two, three.
Hmm, let's see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. That's me trying to maintain the yawniness.
Cool. Now, if we can,
Okay. Did I need to
now
do
I
anything
thought I
else with
thought you
that?
maintained the yawniness
Okay.
from beginning to end. Now we're gonna layer on weight. So we're gonna look for a more full sound. One, two, three, four, five, but keep that same yawny size.
One, two, one, one, two, three, four, five,
Now,
six,
it sounds like you're doing something with your
seven,
tongue, like keeping your tongue
eight.
really
Mm.
stiff or something. Do you feel like you have to like lock your tongue in?
um, my tongue is like sticking up. That it sounds like it. It looks
Okay.
like it's sticking up.
It
I'm looking
sounds
in the
like
mirror right now. I think,
no, and it's like
yeah.
getting in the way of your pronunciation. Like it sounds like I'm not hearing like one, two, three, four. I was hearing other sounds instead of those consonants. Don't do anything that distorts your pronunciation that much. See what happens. See if you can get larger without that distortion of pronunciation.
Okay. One, two, three, four,
Cool. And
five,
now, really leaning into the weight. One,
six.
two,
Uh,
three, four, five.
okay. Um. Ah, um. Oh, one, one. Okay. Yeah. I think I lost for a moment. One, two, three. One, one. Oof. One. Okay. I'm gonna try to yawn again. Um.
Uh-huh.
Okay. One, one, two, three, four, four, five, six, seven,
No,
eight,
you're
nine,
doing it.
ten.
You're
I don't
getting
know.
larger. I think there's some
Um,
distortion of your
I'm
pronunciation that
doing
we
a
want to
little.
not watch out for. Right? If I'm going for like my absolute largest, maybe I'm involving my tongue and pulling that back or something, and it's preventing the sound from sounding like a more speech-like. I'm hearing it especially on your three. The th is really
Right.
interfering. with that size. So see if you can go like 3 3 3 starting baseline.
Okay.
Good. And
So
now
three,
starting there,
three,
get
three,
larger.
three.
3 3 3
Right?
3.
Okay. Three, 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 three,
Good.
three,
So
three,
start cool. So this is what
three.
you're gonna do. You're gonna
Oh,
scale sound in scale size with a single word. And I want you to really pay attention to make sure that it's not distorting. Right? So if you're going 3 3 3 3 3, by the end it doesn't sound like 3 anymore, that means I've gone too far. Does that make sense?
I think you just revert back to animal.
Uh-huh.
I think it's funny. That's really it just it's animal at this
Return
point.
to
It's like
monkey
return to
is
monkey,
very
I
much
guess,
the
but
vibe
like it's so
of
weird.
voice
Okay.
training. We want to be.
Return
This is
you're
literally it.
returning to monkey now.
Fair,
I
but
wanna be human.
while during voice training, we're gonna put human aside. We want to just be big monkey. We're gonna be the biggest, heaviest
Okay.
sounding monkey that we can. This is so actually appropriate, right? If we sound like a bigger monkey, that's gonna be a good goal,
Okay.
right? That said, we don't want it to interfere with pronunciation because we have to be the kind of monkey that can also talk.
Okay, good.
So
I'll be
yeah.
I'll
Jenna
be a
makes a good
monkey that
point.
talks.
Talking like
Okay,
you're in
good.
slow
That makes a lot of
mo,
sense.
like everything you're saying is going to help you achieve this kind of larger. Can you try that? Like everything is really slow.
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, okay. That might be a little better, maybe.
One,
Okay, so
two,
just
three.
slower. One, one, two, one, one, two,
Cool.
three,
I
four.
agree. I
That
agree.
sounds a
Let's
lot
start
better.
with baseline. One, two,
Okay,
three.
yeah.
Now let's go
One,
one,
two, three.
one, 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 and get larger.
Okay. One, 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 um, one, one, one,
Yeah. Can you
one,
hear that the
one. That's
vowel
late
there kind of
a
changed
little bit
from
there.
wa to wa?
One.
Yeah. I heard
With
like
the bigger
one,
size?
one, one, one,
I don't know.
one, one. Keep
Oh,
it
okay.
wa.
One. Like, keep it one. Like,
Yeah,
instead of
exactly.
one? Like, okay. Okay, one. Let's see. One. One. Okay, one. 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 One.
Very good.
One.
Very
One.
good. That was getting, I
Uh,
think, both
okay.
heavier and larger. Hit play there. Give that a listen.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Yeah. It's very gradual and slight. Uh, I guess it sounds exaggerated in my head, but I guess from the recording, it's not that exaggerated, or it's very gradual. I don't know. Makes sense. One,
Can we do
one,
that
one.
again? One, 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 and then stay when you hit like what feels like a plateau. Stay there. One, two, three, four, five.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So like
first
counting,
one, getting
and then
larger in size,
get
and a little
bigger
heavier
inside.
if you can to keep that fullness in mind.
Okay. Fullness. One. Um. one, 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 uh, one, one, one. Ooh, okay. One,
Great job with the weight there.
one,
Yep,
two,
keep going, keep going, keep going. You
three,
got it. Cool.
4, 5, 6, 7,
Very good.
8,
Very good. You
9,
can really
10.
hear when the weight, this one I
Okay.
think was more weight focused. 5 was maybe more size focused, but I liked both of these. I'm going to give them both gold stars. I want you to download these, and this is what I want you to practice. Listen to clip 6 really quickly, and let's see if we can hear. That sounds a little heavier to my ear than your baseline. Would you agree? Cool. Cool.
Yeah, just a
Let's
little
try
bit,
combining the size and the
I
weight
think.
again. So let's
Yeah.
do size first. One. So starting small. One, 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 one. I'm gonna add weight to it at the end. Go ahead and try that, and then start counting when you feel like you've hit a wall.
Okay. Okay. Um, so light. One, 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 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Baller.
9, 10.
There you
Okay.
go.
Okay.
Let's listen to that one. And here a lot of things are changing. Size, weight, and pitch. But give it a listen and tell me what you think.
Hold on. I focus
I
more
think it
on.
does sound like
Does it
there's a
sound
lot
more
of weight
weight
change,
based?
but also the size is changing, so it's not as
Kind of.
audible. If you didn't change the size, it would do this. One, one,
One, one, one, Can you hear that kind of buzzy? One, one.
yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
sound is when we're too heavy for how large we are, where the size and the weight are mismatched or unbalanced, but in the other direction. We did a lot of this kind of mismatch,
Hmm.
a lot of this kind of unbalanced sound today. Uh, but the under full sound, and then if I get heavier, then it's full, and then if I get
Too small for how heavy I am, it starts to get over full.
and it starts to sound that gnomish kind of gremlin-y sound starts to come through. So cool. I think these last
Okay.
3 clips were pretty fucking lit. You were getting the desired change. I'm gonna check in with you real quick. How tired vocally do you feel?
Um, the last, those like final 3 clips, those
Cool.
exercises, I can feel the strain a bit,
But
I
it's
guess.
it,
It's not, I'm not
yes,
exhausted.
you're finding
I don't think so,
fatigue,
but I'm
and
partway
that's
there.
what you need to start listening for and start feeling in your body. It's really important that we work up to the point of feeling fatigued and not past it. If you go past fatigue, that's when we start risking potential vocal damage and long term issues. So, this is a perfect opportunity. Take maybe the
Mm,
rest of today and sit
like,
on this stuff. Maybe, just like think about it. But if you feel vocally tired, put it to the side and don't work on it. Tomorrow, come back and revisit it. Or maybe later this evening after you've had a little chance to rest, try again. Does that make sense? Cool. Fuck yeah. Um,
yeah,
cool. For
it
now, I
does.
think this is everything that we want to kind of focus on. A little larger in size, a little heavier, just enough to start sounding like you're in a different category rather than like, you know, completely changing, from one end of the scale to the other. I think that you're already leaning in this direction and it's sounding pretty freaking good, but be mindful of fatigue. Okay? All right, Kim. I'm gonna hook you up with the recording for
Okay.
today, so I'll send that to you. Um, let me get
Okay.